You're listening to the REITE Club podcast, where the focus is all about helping you grow your real estate investment portfolio and live the life you want to live. Come grow with us and join our community at thereiteclub.com. And now your hosts, Sarah Larby and Alfonso Salemi.
In the different strategies like that you're going out today and you're training and you're coaching. So what markets are you working? You mentioned infill and developments. I know you're currently living in Edmonton. That's where I think you were originally from as well too. So what other markets, are you still in the UK or what strategies and where are you kind of implementing the kind of the infills and what's your main targets and goals?
Yeah, so right now, infills and development projects are actually happening right here in Edmonton. About 4 years ago, we started that in the Lower Mainland, and which is in BC basically. And again, the learning and the education that we've gotten really taught us on how to do our due diligence. And obviously, we're not speculating. At the same time, we really learn how to pick our markets based on, once again, what our goals are. And so let the strategies dictate that. And I always kind of, compare going into real estate strategies. Like, when we were kids, we were happy with just a little tiny rubber ducky in our bathtub, and we're happy to play with that. As we grow older, the toys get a little bigger. And so a lot of people, just like ourselves, we started out with $200,000 single family homes ourselves. And then as we grew and accumulated experiences and learnings, we wanted to play with bigger toys, if you will. And that's what kind of led us into the mobile home park side of things and buying commercial properties. And now basically buying old lots, old lands, scraping them and connecting them all together in land assembly and building really what we want to build.
That's awesome. So I'm actually looking at land, me and 3 other friends of mine, we're going to be building. So I do have some questions. I'm just curious. Can you walk us through like a typical deal that you found, the land, how you found it, what you're building on it, and just give us some examples of how you raised the money and all that good stuff?
Yeah. Oh, big question, hey?
It is. I'm expecting a long answer here.
Okay, there are so many different ways to look at this. And, once again, with every strategy, I go back to the why first. And the why, as you just heard, is really the fact that we wanted to play with bigger toys. At the same time, though, right, the education has really taught all of us that we don't get into any deals or any transactions without identifying at least 2 exit strategies first. So what we really wanted to do is when we first started building, we're like, wouldn't it be really cool if we could actually control the entire process? Because that's also why we got into taking educations, is nobody cares more about your money than you do. So it's all about gaining control over your own finances and how your assets perform. And so we started thinking and going, okay, you know what? This is why a lot of people eventually just go into becoming builders. Is the fact that when you build, you control the quality of the build. And what that really means is even if your exit strategy is to hold on to it for passive income in the long term, well, then during the build process, you can identify what kind of people you're looking to attract, and you can come up with the design, the size, the finishing, everything about that to target those markets. And that's why, again, we keep saying we buy for demand, and now we say we build for demand. And the idea behind that is that, again, we identify exit strategies first. So when we build now in town, what we're doing is we basically list out at least 4 to 5 different exit strategies. And depending on the areas that these lands and these lots are, the first usually, again, is these days Airbnb, or I call it serviced accommodations, to be really honest, because Airbnb is just one platform for something like that. So we call it serviced accommodations. Basically, it's short-term rentals or even vacation rentals. And when we have that strategy decided, then it helps us really narrow down on the areas that we're looking for. So again, we're not just looking for land. We go from strategy first and foremost. And so the areas that we're building in town, for example, is basically if you draw a 5-kilometer radius around the land that we're building on, there is one of the biggest malls currently in town, one of the biggest hospitals that services central and northern Alberta, 2 major universities right in town, and about a 5-minute bus ride to downtown, and a 5-minute bus ride into one of the biggest arenas in the country right now, Rogers Place here in Edmonton, where a lot of hockey games happen, a lot of concerts happen. And so with all that, we're able to really identify who the final users or renters will be. And that way we actually go into deciding on how big the property should be, how big each room should be, and go down from that list.
Yeah, and you know what? Even from afar here, like I haven't invested in Alberta. I know a few people. We have different people that have been on the REITE Club stage from Alberta and out west. But like it seems like the last few years since they built that arena in Edmonton, there's been a real kind of growth in the province as well too. We're seeing it obviously here in Ontario. There's a lot of immigration, a lot of people coming in, but within Edmonton and Alberta, like I know everybody thinks Alberta and thinks about just the oil, what's going on with the oil, but that's more like Calgary, is that's what I've learned from telling people. And now Edmonton is kind of a little bit different. So like those Airbnb properties are coming in for like these events that are at this arena and everything around it, that shopping center that they built in. So, like, is a long-term rental another strategy? The commercial strategies, are you guys doing those as well too with these builds?
Absolutely. So Airbnb right now is probably the one of the most popular topics and strategies that most people are doing. And again, like everything else we do, even with long-term holds, we don't actually manage our properties ourselves. So we have short-term rental specialists managing those. So that's definitely the top one. Why? Because it brings in the best cash flow. And then after that, because the reason why I described where that area is and what the surrounding supporting economic factors are is because if Airbnb does not work, we can go into student rentals, we can go into other temporary or short-term rentals, and then long-term rentals, or last but not least, we can always sell it because we've made money in the buy when we developed it. So there's your 5 exit strategies right there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have more than one exit strategy on every single thing that you're doing because you never know what's going to happen to that market. So I definitely like hearing that. How are you? So you're talking about we. I'm assuming that's you and potentially some other people, but who is we? And then the other question I do have, I was hoping that you can touch on is how are you getting the money for these deals?
Yeah, very good question. And it's actually one of the topics that we're super passionate about because 10 years ago, we were in our 20s still. And it was just really funny going out there asking people to invest hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars into your deals. And then they're like, so how many properties do you have? And I had to go in the beginning. I have 2, one that I used to live in, one I live in now. That's how we got started.
Yeah. And I remember, I remember when you used to give us that confidence in class, because, at that time you had to build your portfolio up as well too. But the answer that you give us is, me and my partners have, right? So that was that confidence is more about the knowledge, right? When they're asking how many properties. Sorry, I had a flash in my brain from that.
All good. And that's really what it is. It's the fact that, without the education, we probably wouldn't be where we are today. Because literally, even to this day, probably 90% plus of our entire portfolio, and we've gone beyond real estate as well. We've invested in businesses too. 95% of our entire business portfolio plus real estate is funded by OPM. And I think the one thing that we just stay really true to what everything that we do is that we give realistic analysis. We don't sugarcoat anything. We don't make up numbers that don't exist, and we do the best due diligence that we can. So when we present a proposal, for the lack of better words, to people that might be interested that we've met through our network, they know that we've already built that reputation as well. And we don't pressure sell in a way. We basically walk them through, kind of like a mini coaching session, if you will, as you guys probably know, is we really walk them through why we do things the way we do and how we do it. However, the most important thing, just like how we coach students that are learning this entire system, is ultimately speaking, every investor that we work with, they also have a financial goal. And so we walk them through the exact same process. So even if our current project that we are looking for funding for does not fit their need or their goal, we walk them through that process, and so they still stay in the funnel with us. So that way we can actually go out there and look for projects that would actually fit for them. And so we've always been constantly building our investor database, if you will, in that regard.
Very cool. And just to go back, OPM stands for other people's money, just in case sometimes, we have very experienced investors listening to this, just like we might have some newer people saying, what does OPM mean? So basically you're using other people's money. Now, Are you registered? Like, are you like syndicating this? Do you have an LP? Like, what kind of setup do you have in structure?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you know what? That's a really good question, because over the last few years, one of the biggest lessons that we've learned is that we're big fans of keeping things very simple.
Thanks for listening to the REITE Club podcast and joining our community of real estate investors online at thereiteclub.com, where the focus is about helping you grow. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks from your hosts, Sarah Larby and Alfonso Salemi.